Welcome back to another video, guys. Big old day here. Big old pour day for the second story. I remember when we were designing and working on the layout of the house and deciding how we were going to build it with our architectural designer, and he was kind of worried that we wouldn't be able to go all the way up to the top of the second story, but hey, no problemo, we got her done. These are always concrete days are typically pretty stressful because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be prepped and done beforehand. So I was up until about 10:30, 11 o'clock the night before, getting a lot of the little details finished off before the pump truck and concrete trucks came at 7 o'clock the next morning. Now, this second story pour, it went off without a hitch compared to the first story. We had a couple issues on the first story, but the second one went much smoother. And one of the main differences is that we use a 3/8 inch aggregate as opposed to a 3/4 inch aggregate, and we that made it a lot easier for the pump truck to get that concrete into the walls. But yeah, this one went much smoother, and having that experience of the first story, it really made all the difference. So you can see we're using a little chute that I made out of HVAC to pump the concrete directly into the window buckings. That's a little improvement that we made for the second story pour, just to make it a lot easier, just to kind of get it in there, just so that we don't have to hand fill it all with buckets. But just to kind of top it off, we did use some buckets. Now, not being able to hear the pump truck and the concrete without any audio kind of makes it seem like, oh, this looks pretty cool. You'll get some audio coming up in a second, and it sounds like you're just shooting rocks into the wall there, and it can seem quite violent. But it's all getting in there and finishing her up all nice. Now, one thing with doing a single slope roof like this with ICF is that it's with any basically ICF block system, it's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt, just with how the system goes together, getting that middle track in place, because there's these steel ties that typically would go at a finished row of block. But since we have that slope on the roof, it makes it a little bit more tricky to get it done right. But hey, we got her done, and we get that single slope for the roof. Now, it's really cool that you can see the concrete coming all the way up to the top of the wall. One of the fascinating things with ICF is, like, you pour these walls with concrete, and right afterwards, you can still kind of budge and move the wall. And if you try it in about 5 or 6 hours, that wall, it ain't moving. We also got that mechanical room poured. And Mr. Zeke Burr from Burr Concrete in Tucson came out and helped us out with finishing that off.
I can't see. Are we at the corners yet? Okay.
So one thing that I learned with the slump of the concrete, the recommendation for pouring ICF walls is 6-inch, but 5-inch slump works a lot better, especially for getting a good flow going through the walls and minimizing any voids that might happen. The 5-inch slump, it just flows under the window buckings and under the windows much easier. We found with a 6-inch, it wants to clump up a little bit too much, but the 5-inch worked much better for this, as well as couple that with the smaller aggregate size. The concrete was flowing through those walls, so you can see Zeke kind of pushing some of the concrete that's flowing at the base of the window over.
A little bit more? Yeah.
one other tip that I picked up from someone that I did do on the first pour, but it bears repeating, is to not pour the concrete directly into the corners. The corners are one of the most kind of places that are most susceptible to blowing out, and they're the weakest points of the structure just when we're pouring the concrete. Once it's filled up with concrete, no problem, but you want to pour to either side of the corners and let that concrete flow into it as opposed to pouring directly into it. Now, I do apologize. I didn't get a ton of footage on this day because I was extremely stressed and just kind of focused on getting things done. But Hannah she was in Sedona with a friend, so she wasn't able to give me some extra videotape or video footage during the pour day. And once again, we're using the helix steel in this mixture of concrete, so it's mixing right at the concrete plant. And you'll notice the lack of rebar throughout the walls, and that's because we are using the helix, so that we don't have to have all that rebar in there. And that also makes it easier just to get a very consistent flow of concrete going around and minimizing those voids again, because the concrete's not getting caught up on the standard style rebar. Now, one little minor detail that I did for all the top ledge boards, so I use a 2x12 with a 3/4 inch plywood screwed to the outside to give us the full 12 inches, but I recessed all the 5/8 by 10 inch anchor bolts into the wood so that they won't run into the trusses or anything like that, and I can always add some more extra anchor bolts after the guys have gotten the trusses in or have just put their layout on. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for watching. We got that outside ledge board on there as well. And we'll catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon. Peace.